Mechanical keyboards. You already know how they work. And this technology has been here for decades and nothing much has changed at all besides more iterations of the MX switches after the patent expired, with naming schemes and color waves conjured up by the likes of a pastry chef. But what if you wanted something different? Like a different way to actuate a switch? There's analog switches that you'll find in more expensive ones like the Wu-Ting 60HE or the cheaper optical switches that some prebuilds come with. And today we have an example of that. Besides the DK61SE, Kimove sent out the optical switches version for me to try out, the DK61E. It is literally the same keyboard but with a different PCB and with optical switches. So there will be a lot of similarities between the two. The optical version is nearly twice the price of the regular version, and it is hot swappable instead, which is a plus. So is the performance and the hot swappability worth the price increase? Let's find out. Hey all, this is Rayf here. How you doing? Unboxing the DK61E is nearly the same experience as the DK61SE. Twice the price, but the box isn't as fancy as the cheaper version. Still, it retains the same thickness anyways. Opening it up, and you'll find the DK61E followed by a standard braided USB-C cable with the same comments I had with the DK61SE. It's thick and hard to conform to angles. Also, I'm happy that this time round they included a metal 2-in-1 switch and keycap puller, which is great. These do not scratch up the keycaps, and these switch pullers make plucking out switches slightly easier than your normal U-shaped cheap switch pullers. Also, we'll find some extra Gateron optical red switches for you to replace if anything goes wrong, which is neat as you do not need to spend money to get some spare switches. Lastly, you'll get an instruction manual with function hotkeys, and yes, this keyboard does not have any software as well. Overall, same experience as the cheaper variant, but the switch and keycap puller combo gives this a point over the DK61SE. As this has the same exact case design as the DK61SE, I won't be going in depth with this. It has the same simple and clean ABS tray mount case with the same typing angle slope. Also, the big Dierya logo on the front seems like a step in the wrong direction as well. It makes the whole keyboard look more tacky than it really should be. Personally, I prefer a clean, simple look without much branding, but having such a big branding where I can see when I type is a no-go. On the back, you'll see the same etchings as the DK61SE that were meant for wireless versions. But sadly, the serial number is not as sussy as before. Again, there are two flip-up feet for limited typing angle adjustment, so at least you won't be stuck with just one typing angle that you may or may not like. This is a feature that's not present in most other custom keyboards, so yeah, it's good to see it here. Overall, it's a simple design, but would be better without the logo slapped to the front. Similar to the non-optical version, these keycaps are OEM profile shine-throughs that are done in Doubleshot PBT fashion, although the sub-legends are laser ablated. Doubleshot just means that they are two separate pieces of plastics, in this case black and translucent, that are injected in two separate molds during production. This means that the main legends will virtually never fade off, while the laser ablated sub-legends will wear off over time. Just like before, these keycaps are 1 to 1.1mm thick, so they won't sound substantial when bottoming out. However, as this board is $50 instead of $25, I do wish they will include thicker PBT caps that are at least probably 1.3 to 1.4mm. Coming in with Gateron optical red switches, these switches have a clear PC top housing, palm stem, and a black PA66 nylon bottom housing. Usually, these materials would mean that it will sound similar to the Gateron KS9 switches because of the materials. However, the sound is far from similar, as these are noticeably more plasticky in top out and less substantial in bottom out per se. As these switches actuate at 45 grams, they do not feel heavy when typing. For context, a 67 gram bottom out switch like the SP Meteor Purples that I have on hand actuates at 44 grams, according to the Ramin Goat's graph. I'm not a linear switch enjoyer, but I think these feel consistent enough across all 61 switches, and they are very smooth for a stock switch. That is already a plus against the TMKB browns that I tried, where some switches feel less tactile than the others. It is something to be expected from an optical switch, however the spring ping is still very noticeable. So how different are these contactless optical switches compared to the traditional MX style switches? Traditionally, these MX switches actuate whenever the stem legs go low enough such that the gold contact leaf closes the circuit, registering a key press. However, this means that theoretically, there is an issue with bouncing, which refers to the literal contact of leaves bouncing off each other during key presses instead of settling down immediately. That's when optical switches come in handy, as these switches are literally actuated with light. Thanks to the hole in the bottom housing, it actuates by blocking the light beam with a stem pole when pressing down. Since it is contactless, it literally has no bounce. However, according to some sources, most switch manufacturers usually have their switches made with a bounce time to be less than 5,000ths of a second. This performance increase with the optical switches then shouldn't be that noticeable. Now, this is where I consider one of the weak points of the DK61E over its $25 sibling, with its Gateron optical rates have a less substantial sounding bottom out and a much more plasticky top out compared to the TMKB browns. As both the DK61E and DK61SE use the same case and steel plate, it seems that the culprit are the switches themselves. Sure, it might have sounded a bit more deeper than the DK61SE, but I can't help but feel that the bottom out sounds very indecisive. It's not firm at all. Oh, did I mention it's also very loud as well? These have the same stabilizers as the DK61SE. These are flat on the bottom too, so there is no mushy feeling when bottoming out. Also, these stabilizers appear to be pre-lubed with the same grease as the DK61SE. However, from my typing, these feel slightly more well-tuned compared to the $25 counterpart. RGB enjoyers rejoice as these variants have perky RGB LEDs instead of the ice-cold white LEDs found on the DK61SE. Pretty bright and colourful, but they have the characteristics of really cheap LEDs, where you can see the RGB break up when you move your eyes across it too quickly. Well, at least now you know that you need to pay at least $50 to have that bourgeois perky RGB LED. And yeah, the usual suspects for all the RGB modes are in there. I have the same feedback as the DK61SE as well, with the well-placed function key at the bottom right corner for easy use of the arrow keys. Other than that, if you are a 60% enjoyer and are not able to afford a QMK or VR supported keyboard, then the function layer on this might satisfy you. It is also just as light as the DK61SE, so it makes for a great travel board if only you chase everyone out of the room or you just force them to wear earplugs while you type on your keyboard happily. However, there is one big flaw that I find it too big to ignore. The case screw threads are plastic, which really compromises on the durability. For those eagle-eyed viewers, you'd realize that my unit had a bump on the top left corner upon receiving it. So I went to disassemble the whole keyboard to find out what was causing it. Turned out it's just the screws going in too deep to the standoff. And on my review, the bottom right screw thread was stripped, and that was just after one rebuild. So for $50 how did it compare to the $25 DK61SE? For the extra $25, you are paying for hot swappability and optical switches with theoretically better performance at the cost of sound. For serious gamers out there, this could be a fair trade-off since most of the time earbuds or headphones are worn, so the sound should really not be distracting. The benefit of no bounce with optical switches is a plus point too. However, the durability of this keyboard is really disappointing, and some reinforcements for the standoff clearly needs to be done. My GK68 with its plastic standoffs have not stripped once from its countless rebuilds over the past 2 years. If it is at $50, there would definitely be better options out there in the market that are not optical switches if performance isn't your main concern. All in all, if you really want to have an optical switch keyboard for the tiny bit of performance edge it has, then the price seems fine. But if you just want a regular mechanical keyboard with some form of hot swap ability, then you could just look elsewhere. I cannot recommend this too as well because of the standoffs. There are other keyboards like the Optical 75 or a used NK65 or KBD67 Lite floating around with metal threaded screw threads designed to reduce thread stripping. And yeah, those keyboards that I mentioned, they are also made of plastic. If I'm not wrong, some of them is polycarbonate and the KBD67 Lite is ABS. Alright, that is all I have for you guys. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.